Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brad. You're watching Firewood at the Furnace, and it's another nice, pleasant day here in Maryland. It's only going up to about 80 degrees again today. We're in the middle of August. It should be scorching hot like it was all through the end of July and the beginning of this month, but we're getting a little relief here, so I love it. But today we're getting into that time of the year where calls are starting to come in for winter heating wood, and those calls are already coming in, and I'm going to talk today about a common theme of confusion this time of year. I noticed it quite a bit last year, and it has already come up again this year. So we're going to talk about a source of confusion when it comes to firewood. Stick around and we'll talk about it. All right, based on simply the title of this video, I'm sure most of you know what we're going to talk about today, but I'm thinking that the title of this video might be attracting some new people over to the channel to watch this video. People that are customers of firewood, not necessarily firewood sellers or people who cut and split firewood, but people who are in the market to buy firewood that are a little confused by what a cord of firewood is. So if you're new to the channel, if you've never been here before, welcome. If you wouldn't mind, please hit that subscribe button there. We do everything firewood related here, from going to the job sites with the tree services to get the logs, cutting the logs, splitting the logs, stacking the logs, and talking about things like this that can make a product a little bit more valuable and a little more pleasant experience for the customer. So we're closing in on that 5,000 subscriber mark. I think we're within about 80 to 100 more subscribers that we need to get to that 5,000 mark. And when we hit those milestones, we always do giveaways here on the channel. So if you're new, please take the time and hit that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. But anyway, back to the topic of the video. Customers need to make sure that they're getting what they want. And the source of confusion that I have found the last couple years is when people call and they say they want a cord of firewood. I'm not really sure that everybody understands what they're asking for. And I'll explain to you a couple situations that I had last year and how I work through those. So I've been on both sides of the confusion when it comes to a cord of firewood. I find that most people think a cord of firewood is actually a third of a cord or a face cord, and we'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. But one of the situations I had last year was a lady called and ordered a cord of firewood, and I loaded up a full cord for her, and she was not there when I made the delivery, but her husband was. And when I pulled up in the dump trailer and he saw the amount of wood I had, he was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know we were getting so much wood." And after I got to talking to him, I found that he thought he was getting a third of a cord, and I showed up with a full cord because that's what they ordered. They were thrilled. We'll talk more about how people think when they order a cord of firewood and it shows up in a pickup truck, for instance, that's a cord of wood. But I'm going to explain all that to you in more detail here in just a couple minutes. All right, the first thing we need to understand is the dimensions, and the dimensions of a full cord of wood is 128 cubic feet. Now, in Maryland, it's required by law that firewood is sold by the cord or fraction of a cord. Now, that could mean a half a cord of wood, a third of a cord, a quarter of a cord, but that's kind of like the way that they determine that the customer is getting the quantity and volume of wood that they are paying for. Those requirements are enforced by the Maryland Department of Agriculture. It's their weights and measures section. And you're required also to have a firewood seller's permit when you sell firewood in Maryland. So based off of that information and any complaints that they get, I guess that's kind of where the intervention or the enforcement efforts come into play. But that way they can make sure that the customer is getting what they're paying for and that the sellers are not basically ripping the customers off. So 128 cubic feet, that might sound a little confusing, but the way I stack my wood here in this yard is I have it in sections. It's all divided up with pallets every 8 feet. So we can simply take a measurement of this section here, for instance, and we can see that that's just over 8 feet long. And then the height is 4 foot tall, just over 4 foot there. So 8 foot wide by 4 foot tall, and all, as you know, most of my wood is all cut roughly 16 inches. And the reason for that is because this section of wood that I just showed you here that's stacked up, 8 foot wide by 4 foot tall, 16-inch lengths, is 1/3 of a cord. It's also known as a face cord because when you look at what a full cord is, this is the face of the pile. So a full cord of wood would be 3 of these stacks put together. 16 inches long, and you pile 3 stacks behind each other. 16 plus 16 plus 16 equals 48 inches, or 4 foot wide. So if we go back and do our math, and I'll put it here at the bottom of the screen, you've got 8 foot wide, 4 foot tall by 4 foot deep. If you multiply all that together, it comes out to 128 cubic feet, which is a full cord of wood. All right, so this brings me to the next topic, and that is people who deliver their firewood in a pickup truck, which is perfectly fine. I did it for the first year before I had the dump trailer, and it worked out really well for me. However, when we're talking about measuring wood, we just talked about the measurements. About 8 foot wide by 4 foot tall by 4 foot deep is a full cord of wood. That is all stacked neatly, stacked tightly, and with as minimal voids and air spaces in between as possible. Now every little piece of firewood has its own unique characteristics. Some are knotty, some are wavy, some might not be perfectly straight, so they don't fit together like a puzzle perfectly. But if you make an effort to stack the wood, you can stack it fairly tightly, and that's how wood should be stacked when you're measuring cubic feet. So if you're ordering a cord of wood and it comes to you delivered in a pickup truck, I will tell you 100% that it is not a cord of firewood. Most people will just throw the wood in loosely, and when you throw it in loosely, you're not getting an accurate measurement because of all the voids and air spaces. But even if you stack the wood tightly inside of a pickup truck, you're still not going to get anywhere near a full cord of firewood. Now this pickup truck measures, it's an 8 foot long bed, it's about 5 foot wide, and just shy of 2 foot tall. So if I were to stack this truck full of firewood neatly, as tightly as I could, and I piled it up a little bit higher than the side of the bed rails here to 2 feet, I would still only have 80 cubic feet of firewood in this truck. We know a full cord is 128 cubic feet, so you're just barely over half a cord. So in reality, you would need 2 pickup truck loads stacked tightly and neatly to equal your full cord. Now, a lot of reason for confusion is because people use words like face cord, bush cord, stove cord, all kind of intertwined when you're talking about the same thing. But a face cord, like I explained to you earlier, is simply 1/3 of a full cord. And then a bush cord or a stove cord is normally referring to a full 128 cubic feet of firewood. But people hear those words and they speak those words, and in reality they don't really know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying anything bad about that, because I was that guy. I had to educate myself on what a full cord of firewood is before I, started doing this firewood thing. So I think these kind of videos are good when people are doing research, especially people that are spending their hard-earned money, especially during these times when fuel prices are so high and inflation has driven everything higher than it should be. But yeah, those words like face cord, bush cord, stove cord, really need to make sure you know what you're getting when you order your firewood. Now here, for instance, is a 7 foot wide by 14 foot long by just about 3 foot tall dump trailer. You might be asking how much wood will fit inside of a typical dump trailer. Now, dump trailers vary in lengths from 12 foot to 14, 16, even 18 foot. But this 7x14 is kind of the average size dump trailer that you see on the road. And I can tell you from experience, because I stack my wood in the fashion that I do here, that thrown in loosely in this trailer mounted up in the middle will hold about 1.5 cords of loosely thrown in firewood. Now, I also know from experience, because last year I had an order for 3 cords of wood and I tried to deliver it all in one load. So I stacked the wood neatly, front to back. Actually, it wasn't just me. My son and my daughter and my wife all came over and helped me. There's a video showing that. I'll link it at the top for you if you'd like to check that out. But we stacked this entire trailer. It took a little bit of time to load it neatly, to get as much wood as we possibly could in this trailer. And even stacked neatly and tightly, it came out to just about 2 full cord. So when you're ordering a cord of firewood, make sure you're getting what you're paying for. So one other thing I did not mention to you earlier when we were talking about cutting the firewood about 16 inches long. That's the most common length for firewood. But people do have different types of wood stoves, different types of fireplace inserts, that some people like their wood cut a little shorter, some people like it cut a little longer. You can find firewood lengths from 12 inches all the way up to 24 inches. But 16 is the most common length because basically when you're measuring the wood, as we talked about earlier, 3 rows equals 48 inches or 4 foot deep. But if you're getting 12-inch cut firewood, you should have 4 rows. If you're getting 24-inch firewood, for instance, you would only have 2 rows. Because 24 and 24 equal 48, so you'll have longer pieces of wood, but it takes up the same amount of space. So just be aware of that also. I cut everything here with what I do. It's all 16 inches. I don't really have any customers who specify a certain length, and to be honest with you, it just makes things a lot more easier and uniform here to cut it all that average 16-inch length, and everybody seems to be happy with that. So just to wrap things up here, I'll tell you a little story real quick. I got a call or a message on my phone this week for a new customer who says he wanted to order 8 to 10 full cord of firewood. That's kind of what triggered my idea for today's video, because I answered him back and said, wow, 8 to 10 cord, that's a lot of wood. Are you speaking of full cords or face cords or thirds of a cord? Because that is a whole lot of wood, and I asked him if he heated his home, obviously primarily with wood, through the entire winter. He messaged me back a short time later and said, yes, I'm speaking of full cords. I have an old farm style house with 2 wood stoves that I use to heat the home primarily with wood, and I'm very excited that you understand what a full cord of wood is. Based on that, I'm sure that we will be getting more wood from you this year than we have from other suppliers in the past. So I don't know what his experience is with those other suppliers, but he was pleasantly surprised that I responded for clarification of what his presumption of a full cord of firewood was. So I always try to have those conversations with my customers to make sure that they understand what they're getting. It's a common theme. I try to say it tactfully as to not insult the customer, but use it as a time for maybe to educate them a little bit as well. So he talked to me a little bit about how much my dump trailer will haul. I told him 1.5 cords per load thrown in loose. So he has ordered 4 loads, which equals 6 cords to start off, and he said he'll probably want more later on. So it's a win-win for everybody. That's another customer that hopefully I'll be able to keep. And yeah, so that's a good thing moving forward. But anyway, I'm going to wrap up today's video. I hope that helps some of you out. I know for a lot of you that watch this channel, this is repetitive information and things that we already know. But I know some new people come here to educate themselves and stop by once in a while, and I hope this video was helpful for them. If it was, please leave a comment below. Let me know that you're new here. I'm always excited to chat with new people that enjoy the content. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time.